Check one.
You have it unmuted, right? So
Yeah, it's unmuted. Check one.
okay. Say check 1, 2, 3, and then pause.
Check 1, 2, 3.
Check one. Yeah, you need to turn that down a little bit more on OBS.
Okay.
Check one.
Still a little hot, you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. About,
Little.
negative 30 or so.
Let's go back down to 35 to 40.
Okay.
Yep, that's good.
Okay.
He's using it right now, getting this fixed.
All right, give me a 1, 1, 2, 3 check.
1, 2, 3, check.
If you take this to people, tell them to talk into the top because in here and online they can't hear it when they hold it with the thing up. Okay. It needs to be.
Okay. I'll do that. All right, I need that to stop, and I need you to 1, 2, 3 check again.
1, 2, 3, check.
It's still pretty fuzzy. Go back to, yeah, put it back up to 30, negative 30. All right, give me a 1, 2, 3 check again.
1, 2, 3, 4, check.
Check.
Oh, there you go. I heard it.
Can you go back to OBS? All right. Yep. OBS. Move it back closer to the negative 1 or negative 25. And we'll just roll with that.
Okay. Now, are we getting a picture when you're seeing?
Yeah, I'm seeing. Looks like Janice in an orange shirt.
Okay. And then went up to the podium, so it's okay. I just wanted to show a picture here, so I wasn't sure. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Okay, I appreciate you. I don't want to start showing on the caster, but we're good then. Well, I appreciate your help. Is he gone? You gone? I guess he's gone.
Yes, he is. Okay, you need some mic.
There we go.
We're good to go, I think. Are you good to go? Yeah, we're good to go. Bless you.
I think it's working. Good question. Let me ask. Is the PowerPoint going to be working? He said it was going to work. It's going to work like it did last night. It's going to work like it did last night. Yeah. All righty. Good morning, everybody. In case you didn't see, there's donuts and coffee, and we're going to have Milan smoking hot barbecue for lunch. So if you haven't eaten there, it's really good. So anyway, looking forward to that. Thank y'all for braving the elements. Talked with Kay last night, and she said they had been watching the weather for days with the approaching of this, and she said she felt like that Satan was trying to stop this, so, but he didn't, and praise the Lord for that. We're grateful that you're here. I realized last night after I introduced David that I spent more time talking about Kay and Paige than I did him, and sorry about that, but but so this morning I wanted to do a little bit more about David. He's a graduate of the Memphis School of Preaching, Freed-Hardeman University, and received his doctorate from Ambridge University in ministry and family therapy. I've known David for a long time, and great guy, and got a lot of good things to say. If you were here last night, I was talking with Janice this morning, and she said she picked up some things she could use, and so me too. And anyway, it was a blessing last night, and anything else? Oh, a couple things, technical things. The reason why we use the microphone is when we're streaming this, and you can't hear it on the streaming if you're not talking into the microphone. And so that's important, because in this room like this, we can hear each other just fine, but you can't hear it on the streaming unless you talk into the microphone. And the technical people told me to talk into the microphone when you use it. Don't talk like this, you know. Put the microphone and talk into the top of the microphone. So that's important for the streaming people. So that's important. Anything else? Let's again start with a word of prayer. Father God, you're amazing, you're wonderful, you're awesome, and we're so thankful that you have adopted us as your children. Father, we're grateful that we have the opportunity today to be together, to share in the fellowship, and to learn more about how to be better servants for you and your kingdom. Father, we ask you to bless David and Kay and their family, and Father, we're grateful that they're willing to use their talents and their knowledge and their experience to the betterment of us all. Father, we ask that you will help us to be a blessing to you and to your kingdom and to other people, and we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. David?
No, it's not up there.
That'll get it.
Oh, he's getting it though.
There's your mic there.
Good morning. I'm so grateful that you are here. Mark has already mentioned the fact of braving the elements to be here, and I'm grateful that you have come. Joe and Karen, it is so good to see you. Love and appreciate you very much, and glad that you're here today. When I was writing my dissertation, my committee said you need to write on autism. I said, no, I'm not writing on autism. I said, I'm writing on premarital counseling. They said, no, you need to write on autism. I said, you didn't hear me. I'm not writing on that. I've lived that. I've scabbed over, got several T-shirts. And they said, you need to write on it. I said, well, if you can convince me why. They said, you can write on it from a clinician's standpoint. You can write on it from a daddy's standpoint. You can write on it from a ministerial standpoint. I looked at them and I said, I don't like any of you on this committee, but I can't argue with you. But I'm forever grateful that I wrote the dissertation that I did on, once you get the diagnosis, where do you start in your journey to get the help that you need? I was writing, and I interviewed this woman at the Autism Center in Bartlett, Tennessee. And as I was interviewing her for my dissertation. I was glad to be able to meet her. She was able to give me some information that I needed. And then when I got ready to leave, she's walking me out. And she said, "Sir, I know that you are of ministerial background." She said, "Promise me that you will use this degree someday to help churches." I said, "What do you mean by that?" She said, "I can't tell you because of HIPAA." She said, "But one of our clients, their grandson is our client. He has autism. They've been going to the same church for 30 years. The Bible school teachers were starting to complain to the powers that be at the church where they attended. And they said, this child is unruly. This child, we don't know what to do with him. This child is really causing us difficulty. And we've talked it over with teachers who had him before he was promoted up to another classroom, and they say the same thing. The powers that be at that church said, don't worry about it, we'll take care of it. Now here's what I could not believe that I heard. They called this family in who had been there for 30 years, who had worked and to help to build that church with blood, sweat, and tears. And they said, we love you, we appreciate you, but we have to respectfully ask you to leave because your grandchild is so disruptive to our Bible school program. I look at the woman who's telling me this story, tears were streaming down her face. I didn't even know these people, and tears came to my eyes because in all the years of ministry, I've never been asked to leave the church because my child has autism. And I looked at her and I said, this should never be. And she said, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Please do something to help churches. One of the reasons that I believe that they were having so much trouble is they didn't take the time to get to know what autism was. They didn't take the time to get to know who this child was. And I think one of the things that we can do in a setting like this is to help to remove the stigma. Not everyone in here has a child with autism. Not everyone in here works with someone with autism. But I guarantee you, you know people who have a child that is on the spectrum. And so one of the questions that I'm asked quite often, what caused my child's autism? And if I could figure that out, I would be a very wealthy man. But as we get into this presentation, let's go to the next slide. Before I give you that information on what to expect, it hit me last night I didn't give you my information. I made it easy. I've called it Hope in the Works, based off of our child Hope. And I just use that all the way through. So if you type in Hope in the Works, you're going to find me in any number of different ways. I have a YouTube channel. That's new ground for me. The email is hopeintheworks@gmail.com. My cell phone number you see there, 731-226-7377. That's all my information. If ever I can help you in any way, if ever you run across someone, hey, I need some help with autism, it is not uncommon for my phone to ring. I got a phone call, it's been a couple of years ago now. They said, we've never met. We live in Texas, but we have a mutual friend. We have a child with autism, and we're trying to figure out what to do. And so anything that I can do to help you, there's my information, and I'd be honored for you to do that. Now let's go to the next slide. And what I want us to understand here is there are ways that we can find out. That's hard for me to read. Let me turn around this way. There are two different ways that we can approach things. We can either react to something or we can respond to something. If we react to something, it happens often impulsive, it's instinctive, it's based on the unconscious, and we just do what we need to do. If we respond to something, it's well thought out. We think about all the different ways that something could happen and try to respond in an appropriate way. As we look at the next slide, I have here reacting. All of us have reacted. We've been driving down the road. We've gotten off the road. Whoever put the grooves on the side of the road, I'm so glad that they did. I'm glad, because it helps you to get back where you need to be. But sometimes you lose control. He's pulling a boat. He lost control, and he tried to take care of that need, but in doing so, he reacted to it. Instead of responding to it, he oversteered, and then they had to get the police involved to get him situated. And that happens to us in life. It also happens to those who are dealing with autism. One of the things that you will find yourself doing is meeting yourself coming and going. When you get this diagnosis, you will consume everything you possibly can, but don't let it overtake your life. Learn what you can learn. Talk to people who have been there, and live your life. Because if you don't, you're just going to be reacting. I've got to read this article. I got to read this article. I got to do this. 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 And you're reacting to the diagnosis. Now, when you respond, the next slide shows us, you can see that they've obviously gotten off the road. You can see where the white line is. But they're not the least bit bothered because they're able to pull right back on and continue their journey. So we can either react or we can respond. Let's move on. There's a broad range of conditions. We're talking about what caused my child's autism. There's a broad range of conditions. Usually by age 2 is when a child is going to be diagnosed and can be diagnosed with autism. And so I want to challenge you and encourage you to know what these conditions are. Some of this is redundant from last night because I didn't know if we'd have some new people here today, and I wanted to make sure everybody had the information. When we started our journey, 30 in 10,000 were being diagnosed. Today that number is 1 in 36, as we mentioned last night. And there's a reason for that. There's been a big jump over the 35 years that we have been dealing with autism. So it has a broad range of conditions. Let's continue on. You can have a sibling with autism. You can have, and why are we seeing autism? Once you have a child with autism, a sibling can have it. It's not going to be the case. It's not that in our case. Could be, though, for some. If you have parents who are older when they give birth to a child, the potential for autism to be there is there. Now, when I say older, statistical information says 35. That's not old. But if you wait to 35 or so, the potential to have a child with autism is greater. I've known of people who had children in their 40s and had difficulties with a child. There are certain genetic conditions that create problems. There is a very low birth rate. I know you can't tell it by looking at me. I was a preemie baby. I weighed 4.5 pounds when I came home from the hospital. I've never been diagnosed with autism. But a very low birth rate, weight can be an indicator that autism could be in your future, could be. But here's what I want us to understand. Genetics is the biggest factor. 80% of all autism is based from genetics. So 80%. Let's continue on. Now you see in this chart, I'm not going to read everything off this chart, but you see the different signs of autism. I put this in here if you wanted to take a picture with your camera on your phone, just so that you would have that information. That's why I put that in there. So the different signs of autism, some of that we've highlighted. There's still some new things on here that I have not highlighted. Let's move on, please. Why are the numbers rising? Why are the numbers rising? Well, the reason the numbers are rising, we're seeing where 1 in 36 being diagnosed. But today, we are seeing more increased awareness. More events like this are taking place. More is being done in the school systems to help people to understand what autism is. More is taking place in other settings, such as the Star Center, where Paige works. So there's an increased awareness. We also have improved the diagnostics. Those have improved tremendously from when we started our journey in 1990. And so the diagnostics are better. The outcomes are known. The numbers are rising because of that. The American Academy of Pediatrics began encouraging universal testing in 2006, which led to more children being identified as being on the spectrum. But then the biological factors, we mentioned that. Some statistical information, I mentioned 80%, that's what I see most, but I have seen it as high as 87% is due to biological and genetic factors. Let's go to the next slide, please. The biological factors. We've already mentioned the age of 35 years of age or older. But then when a person is exposed to any number of different problems, such as pollution, air pollution, exposure to certain pesticides, those things are passed on to the children through the breast milk of their moms, and it wreaks havoc on them. Maternal obesity, diabetes, affected immune, 67% increase of autism according to Johns Hopkins Institute because of diabetes and because of those environmental factors and maternal obesity. So we're trying to make some sense and to give you some idea as to why. We've already mentioned the extreme birth weight. That's the National Institute of Health tells us that that's a problem. And so we're trying to make sense of all of this. So we're looking at biological factors, but it doesn't stop there. Let's go to the next slide. As we look at other biological factors, birth difficulty, leading to periods of oxygen deprivation to a baby's brain. Sometime I have known, and I have a nephew that came into the world this way. My sister was bringing this child into the world, and they said, push, 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 push. She's pushing. And he comes into the world as blue as could be because the cord had wrapped around his neck. And she was pushing as they were instructing, and then they realized. But by the time they realized, the oxygen had been cut off from his brain, and he's had difficulty his whole life, and he's an adult today. But he's had problems because of that. Sometimes that happens in the birthing process, and it can lead to such as brain problems, but also it can lead to autism as well. These factors alone are unlikely to cause autism, but they increase the risk. They increase the risk for these children. The Western style diet that we eat, and I was right out there with you. Donuts, donuts, donuts. I was out there with you, and they sure were good. Thank you, whoever got those. Y'all need to leave the rest of those, and we'll take care of those in a minute. But the Western style diet, the things that we eat, a lot of processed foods, a lot of the dairy, what they have in our dairy, and all of those things can lead to. As a matter of fact, I was reading not too long ago that just cutting out dairy can make a profound impact on these autistic children. All right, let's move on to the next. Now, this is another slide that I put in here for you to take a picture of. Increasing numbers of people being diagnosed with autism, and I like the way this graphic was set up. And I knew it'd be small, but if you take the picture of it, you can see what I have in there for you, and that's why I put it in there. Next slide, please. Environmental factors. You see these kids are playing, and there's a factory in the background, and all that pollution is going up, and they're breathing that every day. There's no telling what kind of runoff they're having in the water where they live. No telling. And so you have these individuals who are being exposed to these kinds of things. Now, Mark knows this. When we were on the radio the other day, we were talking about the highest incidence of autism in America. Let's see how well you do. Mark, you cannot say a word. Where do you think the highest rate of autism in America is? Anybody want to take a guess? Don't be bashful. I know you now, John. Go ahead. Pennsylvania. Good guess, but no. Okay, you're getting warmer that way. Chicago, Illinois. Good guess, Karen, but no. The highest incidence of autism in America is the state of New Jersey. But you think about where New Jersey is located, right there across the river from New York. High incidence of rates of autism in New York. But you think about what's there. All of the smog, all of the factories, all of the runoff, all of the pollution, it's all concentrated, and it does wreak havoc on a person's system. Next slide. We also see people who are exposed to different polymers. They're exposed to different materials. You just think about right here, do we need to take cover? Oh, okay. Not here though, right? Okay. But you think right here in this building, the carpet on the floor, the covering on the seats, the foam rubber in the seats, the different polymers that we come in contact with every day. That's a big flood. You know, Mama said there'd be days like this. I'd lose an audience. All right, next slide, please. And here is just a slide that I put together for you, just so you could see ways that you don't even think about. The padding for carpets, baby mattresses, different textiles, different things, the chemicals that are used to preserve these things, the chemicals that are used in the manufacture of these things. You think about small children. Where do they put things? Straight to the mouth. Straight to the mouth. And so, you know, it can happen. And so I wanted to put that slide up just so that you would see an idea as to how autism can happen. It's, like I said, 80% of it's biological, but it can be due to smog, to runoff, to chemicals, to smoke, to these environmental things. Next slide, please. It can even be if you live and your house is located next to the interstate. You think about all the traffic that comes, all the exhaust that comes, all the brake dust that comes, all the various things you don't think about. And so I'm trying to help us to make some sense as to how it happens. That doesn't mean it's always going to be that way. But these are things that are happening that can be linked to some of the higher incidences and numbers that we're seeing today. Next slide. Metal toxicities. You think about your mercury, your lead, your cadmium, your aluminum. Here again, plastics, all of those things. Next slide. Pesticides. Think about what they spray on our foods that we don't even think about. Now, in my estimation, the best French fries you'll ever buy are McDonald's. How many of you agree with that? But did you know the chemical process that they put those potatoes through, the farmer cannot even be near them, I forget how long, a prolonged period of time, because a McDonald's French fry is always a very, very light color. It's never brown or toasty looking. They're white. And it goes through a chemical process for that. And they run these potatoes through a chemical process, then they are stored, pardon me, in a silo. And I forget what the period of time is. It's been a while since I read that article. And they are very toxic. But they sure are good. But I can't tell you the last time I had one. When I read that and saw that, I said, never again, never again. So I hate it. I just ruined McDonald's French fries for a lot of you. But it's, you know, we laugh at that, but it's this very thing right here. It's what they're putting on the potatoes and the foods that we eat. Next slide, please. Now, I didn't mention this last night, but we did mention the fact that 5 times higher boys are diagnosed with autism more than girls. Girls have the XX chromosome. The little boys have the XY chromosome. Autism always comes in on the X chromosome. And so when autism comes in on the X chromosome on little boys, they don't have another X chromosome. That chromosome is destroyed. This is called Fragile X syndrome. Girls may very well have autism, but it doesn't show up in them because they have another X chromosome to override and take care of the one that was destroyed because of. But it always comes in on the X chromosome. And so I say that to say this: when there is a genetic deviation or a problem, that's why we're seeing higher incidences of boys being diagnosed with autism than girls. That's just a simple statement. There's quite a bit of research done on that. I won't bore you with those details, but just to suffice it to say, it always comes in on the X chromosome, and that's why we're seeing the higher incidences in boys than in girls. Next slide, please. Now, here are some professionals that you need to be contacting. When I was teaching at Freed-Hardeman, one of the classes that I taught was advanced clinical psychopathology, abnormal behaviors. When I was asked by the department chair to teach that class, he said, would you teach advanced clinical psychopathology? I said, sure. And then I started laughing. And he said, why are you laughing? I hadn't asked you anything but to teach. And I looked at him and I said, what did you ask me to teach? And he named the class again. I said, this is going to be great. I said, I was born to teach this class. Dr. Looney teaching advanced. Then he started laughing. He said, I never would have thought of that. I said, you don't have to think like I do. Your last name's not Looney. My name has taught me a lot over the years. I learned to fight with the best of them when I was a kid because I was called everything under the sun. But as an adult, it's taught me to laugh a lot. Well, next slide. Oh, wait, no, I didn't get off this slide. I'm sorry. Look at your child neurologist, your child psychologist, your developmental behavioral pediatricians, your general pediatricians, neurodevelopmental pediatricians, and your child psychologist. And I brought up that other class that I taught because I would tell my students, I said, when you get settled in an area, one of the things I'm going to challenge you to do is start getting to know these people so that when you start seeing clients in a specialized way, because all my students there were doctoral students, I said, I want you to be able to pick up the phone, and when you pick up the phone and tell them who you are, they will know who you are, so that you can start getting the help to the people that need the help the most. And so this is a list of folks who can help you because they're highly specialized and highly trained and very qualified to help you with the diagnosis. You will need a diagnosis. And the reason you'll need that diagnosis is because that diagnosis will open up doors for you that not having one would. Next slide. That medical diagnosis, the doctor can connect the dots. When we started our journey, we were in denial. When we started our journey, we weren't exactly sure. But the doctors started connecting the dots. They can help you deal with the whole person. They can help you synthesize the medical information that is there. And so, get that medical diagnosis. Next slide, please. Why to get it? That doctor can provide that community care. That doctor will see your child throughout the lifespan. The doctor's diagnosis is needed in order to obtain services. That doctor's diagnosis will play a role in the choice of developmental therapies that you will need. And so that'll help your child in a tremendous way. Next slide. Why to get it? It can alert you to the presence associated with medical problems that accompany your child's ASD. A child is going to have autism, but they could always have a secondary diagnosis as well. It could be something like ADHD. It could be anxiety. It could be depression. There's a lot of anxiety and depression. We're starting to see where more children now with autism are committing suicide. And so it's extremely important to have that diagnosis, to have the team working with you so that you can protect that child to the best of your ability. Next slide, please. Is that it? That's what I thought. All right. I was thinking for some reason there was one more. I know that this was kind of a tedious topic because we were trying to make sense out of. There's no way that we can say, this does it, this does it, this does it, this does it. But the indicators are there. And so I wanted to present that so that you would at least be aware of the things that research is showing. Now, let's have some questions.
David, not a question, but an observation.
Okay.
I notice whenever you talk about this, that you always say, instead of hope got the diagnosis, you always say, when we got our diagnosis. And I think that's fascinating. I talked to Dana about that last night. Can you comment maybe a little bit about that? So,
I can. It affects the whole family. When Hope got the diagnosis, if I were to say Hope got the diagnosis, she wouldn't know what the diagnosis was and for what. But as mom and dad, it affected us in a different way. So we got the diagnosis because we were the ones who had to implement. We were the ones who had to find a program. We were the ones who invested in. And so we got the diagnosis. And then there's a lot of people who get the diagnosis and it goes in one ear and out the other. They don't do anything with it. But when we got the diagnosis, after we got over the crying, and after we got over the shock, and as we went through that denial and got through that, Kay and I looked at each other and we said, is this going to make us love our child any less? And she said, no. I said, so we're going to do what we need to do. We were told to do our homework, so we did our homework. And so that's why I always say we, because we have to implement that for her.
How long did that process take,
Which process?
what you just named?
Oh, everybody, well, you could look at the 5 factors
I
of
mean, for
grief.
y'all, how long did it
Oh,
take?
for us.
Well, how long did it take?
Kay, what would you say? Did we struggle with that for, it wasn't a year?
It was
Yeah. That's what I was going to say, 6 months. 6 months we were really bad. Part of that time we were in denial. That's our child. There's no way. But at that point, we said, okay, we got to get with it, and we're a team. Kay provides for me what I can't provide for myself. I provide for her what she can't provide for herself. And we just tag teamed and said, we're going to do whatever it takes to give our child the best possible chance. And that's why I hit last night. Early intervention is the key. It's the key.
Ours has been having intervention ever since before she could walk, because she walked late. So it was a year old or a little bit after. So I'm going to ask this one question, and
Sure.
I'm going to hush.
You can talk all you want.
I don't want to.
Oh, okay.
I'm a Christian woman.
Yes.
I've always taught Sunday school.
Uh-huh.
And I want an honest answer. Did you ever go through the point where you were actually angry with God about it?
No.
How do you deal with that? I'm not saying I still am,
Yes.
but I had those feelings for a while
Yeah.
because I guess, as a great grandmother, I had all these plans,
Right.
as a school teacher, retired, just to keep her. She was going to be reading before she was 2 because I
sure.
loved reading, and then I didn't see these things happening. And I kept saying, why? Is that?
No, I mean, that's perfectly normal. And a diagnosis like this affects everybody differently. And we're not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. The shaking our fist at God didn't, no, I didn't, well, no, I know, I understand that. But the questioning God, I don't think really came up with us, did it? I'm going to defer to my wife and let her.
I know when we started our journey and were given that diagnosis, it was a very hard pill to swallow. And you go through all these emotions, and I know that I dealt with the why more than he did, because that's the way we're built. Females are wired that way. And a coworker said to me one time, because I was having that conversation with her, I was angry, I just couldn't understand why. And she said, why not? And I just looked at her. I said, why not? And she said, why did it happen? You may never know. We still really don't know. But she said, is it going to change anything? Is it going to change the way you take care of her? And I looked at her and I said, no. We just had to rearrange our thoughts, rearrange our plans, our dreams, the path. We changed the path. And once we accepted that, everything kind of settled. And we were surrounded by good, strong people. At church, our friends, we were in the school settings. All these people just kept pushing us and helping us and lifting us up and strengthening us. And coworkers could even tell when I was having a really struggle day. And it helped. And someday maybe I'll get that answer as to why. Because I did everything I knew to do correctly, and I still don't know why.
I mean, she ate right, she exercised, she did everything the OBGYN doctor said for her to do the way that he said to do it. And then this child comes into the world, and there's the diagnosis that we have. That was me saying that. Right. For every way one has been delayed, the other child has not. And I got to tell you, and we've talked to Paige about this as parents, we were very concerned, are we showing too much attention to your sister because of this diagnosis? And Paige was very forthright with us and very understanding with us, and she really helped us because we didn't want to give everything to one to the exclusion of the other. We had a group in Hattiesburg, when I was preaching in Hattiesburg. It was called the ARC House. And it was a brand new facility that was built. Brett Favre donated a handicapped big old bus and everything to us. And we had a weekend respite once a month. And so Hope really looked forward to going to the ARC house because they would go on field trips. They would go to restaurants. They'd go shopping. They had a big enclosed playground that was safe. The people that ran it, one of the ladies was a special needs trained nurse, and the other was a special ed teacher who worked with special needs. And these two women tag teamed together and ran this respite. And it was wonderful. Now, we'd go pick her up on Sunday morning, so we could have her at services with us. But that was also Paige's time, because then we could take Paige shopping or to a movie or to any number of places. And so we tried to do our best to make sure that they both got the attention they needed. And, it's a blessing, because Paige has helped us with her sister more than we could ever imagine. And they're very close. Now, they would fight like sisters growing up, but they're still very, very close to this day. And so it is what it is, because Kay said, "What are we going to do? What are we going to do?" I said, "We're going to love her. And we're going to do what we can to the best of our ability for her. And we'll learn along the way." Yes,
So
sir.
David, later on this afternoon, the session is how to thrive in your marriage. I
Yes.
think that's going to be very important, and I love the word thrive. A question that I have on the topic that we're covering right now, as a pharmacist,
Yes.
you hear all the time the connection, correlation between vaccines and autism. And I've got an opinion about that, but I'd like to hear what you say about that too.
I've done a lot of reading and research on the vaccines. A lot of research has been done. A lot of research is being done. And you can find anybody out there that you want to find, and you can find somebody who's going to line up with you every step of the way. Vaccines are the problem. Then you're going to find this person over here, vaccines are not the problem. Everything that I've read up to this point, I don't believe the vaccines are the problem, personally. I think if we were to raise up our sleeve, there's a lot of us here that have the MMR. Is that the MMR? Is that the scarring where we got the, yeah, smallpox, thank you. I knew that didn't sound right when I said it. But, and we're all doing okay. But to that end, I know that vaccines have changed tremendously from back when we got those earlier in our life, when we were younger. I'm not saying this to be a lightning rod, but I really like the fact that President Trump and RFK are really putting a lot of emphasis on autism right now. And I think he would say the vaccines are the problem, from what I've heard him say. And then I've heard him kind of waffle on some of that, so I don't know. But me personally, I don't think the vaccines are the problem.
So David, first I want to give you a little bit of comfort. McDonald's French fries are not as good as they used to be, so you're not missing that much.
Okay.
By cutting those out. Second, thinking about the environmental potential causes for autism.
Sure.
Those are things that obviously we continue to experience or consume even on into adulthood.
Sure.
So I'm assuming that if those are the cause, it has something to do with the developmental stage of the brain.
Yeah.
Or is there any potential for, I guess, for lack of a better way of putting it, adult onset autism?
I think the way you worded it, James, first was the developmental part of the brain at that time. You know, you saw on the slide the kids, small kids, with the industrial stuff there. And I chose that slide for a reason because, you know, these kids are playing out in it. They don't think anything about it. And I think it does more lend itself to the developmental stage of the brain. The adults that we're seeing now that have autism, it's because of the advanced testing that's being done now. They've probably had it very early on and never were diagnosed, didn't know what it was. They knew something wasn't right, but they didn't know what it was. And so I don't think as you get older, I think your body kind of levels off with that. Does that make sense?
Kind of a question for Kay and for you too, and everybody kind of in the room. Did you ever have any feelings of guilt? When I was watching those slides, the first thing that came to my attention, my mind was, there's really not anything you can do about it. I can't get away from this carpet. I can't get away from this paint. I can't. It's there. But did you ever have feelings of like, there's something I did wrong that makes this happen, that made this happen?
I think Kay mentioned that kind of a moment ago, didn't you not? She did everything right. She exercised. She ate. I mean, on schedule. If the doctor said, don't put this in your mouth, she didn't put it in her mouth. And all that kind of thing. I'll turn it over to you and let you answer for yourself, but.
Well, I've had so many people to tell me their opinion on why. And I just finally just had to, okay, thank you, and tune it out and go on. And I had one person to just point blank tell me, well, you were under a lot of stress. And that caused it, meaning it was my fault. My daddy passed away when I was about 4 or 5 months into my pregnancy. And yes, it was stressful, but I didn't feel like that affected. But this one person was very adamant that I was under so much stress, that was the cause. And a little bit it did mess with my head some, and the guilt, and what did I do? And yes, I did go through recalling, did I do something I wasn't supposed to do? But I couldn't think of anything that I would have changed, and I personally don't believe that high stress moment affected this situation. Again, we still don't know why, because looking at our family tree on both sides, it's not anywhere there. So I don't know about the genetics. I don't know. Just don't know.
Is there danger in a misdiagnosis of ADHD where they start a child on a medication versus that child should have been diagnosed autistic?
Well, whenever anybody's misdiagnosed, there can be a danger. It doesn't matter, you can put anything you want there, ADHD, anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, it doesn't matter. If they get a wrong diagnosis, the protocol's not going to be right. And so, yes, I was doing some counseling one time with a couple, and I just happened to, the husband said, my wife just isn't herself anymore. I said, well, the next time that we get together, I said, will you bring in her list of meds? And they did. And I looked at the meds, and I'm not a pharmacist. I did have a psychopharmacology course. At the time, I thought, why in the world do I need this? But I'm glad I had it. And one of our members, Mark, I showed the information because he's a pharmacist. And it was just a list. It was nobody's name on the list. I said, do you see anything wrong with these meds? He said, yeah, this one's fighting this one. They should not be on this particular medication. I said, that's what I thought. So when I met with him again, I said, take this list to your pharmacist. The pharmacist said, I've been filling this for years. I never caught it. If I had caught it, I'd have never filled it. But then they had to get the doctor involved. And so this is not an autistic thing. This is just somebody. And the next time those folks got with me, she was totally different in a good way. And he walked in and hugged my neck. He said, you gave me my wife back. And so if you have a misdiagnosis, you got problems. So yes. Yes, Dana.
This has brought up so many questions, so many ideas. Our son was diagnosed with ADD when he was about 5. We knew from pregnancy there was something wrong, but, we didn't get diagnosed. But I just want to point out that we all dream about that perfect little child that you're going to have, what they're going to be, how they're going to be like. And, a whole lot of times they're not what you dreamed. Your expectations were different. And so there are a lot of people, for instance, I have a lot of friends who have Down syndrome children. Mm-hmm. The ADD diagnosis was completely devastating to us. And dealing with him, he's almost 40, dealing with him for 40 years has been really hard. So I'm saying all that because when he got diagnosed, there was nobody else had a child that had a problem. I had no friends. I had friends. They didn't understand. They felt sorry for me. I got lots of hugs and to this day when I see them, they ask me about him. How is he? What's he doing? And when he succeeds, they're so happy. But it's just a difficulty that you're given, and you learn to deal with it and work around it, and you can still have a good life.
A very fulfilled life.
Very fulfilled. And I look at it as, like you said, it was my job to help him. I'm supposed to try to guide him where he needs to go and see what I can do to help him.
Well said.
I agree with everything Dana just said. And you get to a point where my thought now is God entrusted us with this child. And this child can work a room better than any of us in here as far as personality, talking to somebody. I've seen her melt some of the hardest, hard-hearted people just by being herself. I just turn her loose and let her go. And I know that God works through her. There is a purpose for this life being here and the lives that she can touch and the people she can influence that none of the rest of us can, in even just the smallest ways. And God entrusted us and blessed us because you get to a point where you realize God has blessed us. He blessed us with this child. And this child can teach us more things than we could ever learn on our own. But God entrusted us to take care of her, nurture her, and raise her to be the best that she can possibly be. Same as what Dana is saying. God entrusted them with their son. And people will say, well, I just couldn't do that. You'll hear that. I just couldn't do what you're doing. Well, you know what? I didn't think I could either. But you find it. And some days are straight up the mountain. But you just adapt and you just hang on tight and you tag team. And you realize this is a blessing. Some days it's harder to see those blessings, but blessings nonetheless.
As I said last night, I teach pre-K at Jackson, and we have a 3-year-old program for kids with special needs to be just early access. And I wanted to say that, but then I wanted to also say that kids are more empathetic than they at a young age than what they are at an older age. And once you get that child in there and the other children learning that, I explain it to my kids as, well, their brain doesn't work like your brain. And that's an easy enough explanation that the kids accept it. And it's amazing when you put 4 or 5 of those kids in the same room, what can happen, for the good, for the bad. But it's a lot of good that goes on with them.
We're off schedule.
Yeah, that's what I say. It's time to, this has been fantastic, and I appreciate everything, but David, you ready to move on, or do you want to take a break
Well,
a minute?
let's everybody take a break.
Okay, very good.
Because I've always been told the mind can comprehend what the backside can do.
All right, let's break for a few minutes. What, 5 minutes, 10 minutes?
10.
10 minutes.
Let's
Let's
do
break
10
10
minutes.
minutes and we'll come back. So thank y'all. All righty, we'll get everybody back gathered again, especially our speaker. I think he heard me. I've known David a long time. He likes to talk, so. All righty. Very, very good. A good conversation this morning. I wanted to say, as we get started, several teachers have said something about maybe wanting to get some PD out of this, and we don't know for sure. It'll have to be approved on a level, but the secretary said that the PowerPoint slides are available, that would help you. She can email them to you. So that's Judy back there. Wave, Judy. She can, if you can get her email address to her, she'd be happy to send you the PowerPoint slides, and that might help you get your PD. So without further ado, as soon as David gets plugged up and ready, we'll be ready to go.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you. We have a Hallmark card store at our house. There's not a day that didn't go, or a week that doesn't go by that she won't say, Dad, who can I send a card to encourage? Or who's sick that I need to send a card to? And she's done that her whole life. And I've had a lot of people. I go to visit somebody in the hospital and said, I got my hope card. Got my hope card. And so thank you, Karen. Oh, y'all are waiting on me. I was waiting on y'all. I was like, okay, what are we doing? Roll. Okay, let's do it. You're going to have to listen faster than you ever listened in your life, because the food is coming, isn't it? It's here. We're set for 11:30, but you got it. Okay. All right. This lecture, I believe, is going to be very beneficial. 10 things I wish I had known when we got diagnosed with autism. 10 things. Let's go ahead and start running through the slide. I love this Ralph Marston quote. What you do today will improve all of your tomorrows. If you want to improve with an autism diagnosis, it's what you do today, and it's how you do it. It's something that is going to take a lifetime. But if you do a little bit each day, you don't have to, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. How do you eat this autism elephant? One bite at a time. Do a little each day to reinforce, to help, to encourage, to challenge, and it can make a difference. Next slide, please. Find a community of people. And you're going, wait a minute, we just had this lecture. Yes, we did. But I think you can't state it enough. It is imperative that you find a community of people, your doctor, your psychologist, your teachers, your counselors, programs that are offered in your community. Check with your local universities. I mentioned that last night. They all have a behavioral science program. And those students, those grad students, need to work with your kids so that they can learn their craft and graduate. So they are very active, very active. And so find your community of people. I wish somebody had told us ahead of time, you got to find the right people in the right place to help you So find them. All right, number 2, 10 things. And I chose this because there's always going to be 10 fingers. 10 things I wish I had known. Let's move forward. Number 2, I wish somebody had told us this. Try the serious interventions first. We were always told to mainstream. That was what we were told to do, mainstream in the schools. And we had some success with that. It went pretty well for us. But I think we could have been further down the road. And Kay, don't you think we could have been further down the road if we'd have done some of these other interventions? The ABA and the CBT, and we would have been so much better off had we done some of these therapies first. And let's look at what the ABA and CBT is. Next slide. The applied behavior analysis. That's the ABA. And here are the goals. It increases positive behaviors. In addition to that, it improves social interactions and communication. When you have a child that's going through this type of therapy, it reduces challenging behaviors. It teaches new skills. And it promotes independence. And that's why the ABA is so good in working with children that have autism. Now, it's not the only criteria. It's not the only therapy there is out there. I got CBT listed on the next slide, and I like it. Let's go to that next slide. I like it because the cognitive behavior theory, I like that therapy because, I said therapy, because it is present focused. I say it like this: yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery. Make the right use of today. And it causes a person to work with them where they are today. It's goal-oriented. In addition to that, you have a collaborative group of people that work with you in that process. And another thing I like about CBT is it's evidence-based. It's tried, it's true, it works. That doesn't mean that there aren't some other therapies out there. I didn't list a whole lot of therapies. Matter of fact, these were the only 2 that I put into this presentation. But we're talking about 10 things I wish I had known. I wish I had known to start with some of these things first. Here again, we did have some luck with the integration into the classroom, into regular classrooms. That worked well for us. The third thing I want to mention here it is. It was mentioned last night, and I started to go here last night, but I didn't. Think in inch stones instead of milestones. Let that sink in for a moment. When our child was little, we lamented the fact that our daughter was missing out on milestones. We lamented the fact that that first day of kindergarten was not going to happen for her. But in retrospect, although there have been a lot of things that she's missed out on, it does not diminish the fact of the victories we saw together with her. They were enormous, and they were worth celebrating. I told you last night that we integrated Paige into that when she's 3.5, there's 3.5 years difference in their ages. And so we thought if it worked for Hope, it would help Paige. And so we would include her in on those things. And it helped both of them. But I love the way that this is worded. Inch stones instead of milestones. Milestones. All right? 10 things I wish I had known. Here it is, number 4. Use social stories. Whenever we travel, or whenever you travel, what's the first thing a child's always going to say? When are we going to get there? When are we going to get there? To say an hour and a half, or we'll be there in 2 hours, does not compute. But we'll say, we'll be there in 2 Andy Griffith shows. Or we'll be there in 2 Brady Bunch shows, or 3 Brady Bunch shows, or whatever the case may be. That's understood. That's taking something from social that she's familiar. Or, if we're on a long trip, it'll be 10 Brady Bunch shows. Oh, Daddy, is it going to be that many? So you got to figure out different ways to communicate. Why? Because they process differently. But she equates that. 10 things I wished I had known when we got our diagnosis. Number 5, here it is. There is nothing to cure. It is not a disability. It is a different ability. They see things differently. They process differently. They say things differently. But there is absolutely nothing wrong with either one of our girls, if that makes sense. The point I'm trying to get across is you just have to learn to communicate differently. Meet them where they are so that you can work with them and get them where you need them to be. Autism is the diagnosis, but it's not who she is. And so there is nothing to cure. Does that make sense? I know what I'm trying to get across there. All right, number 5, that's where we were. There was still something on that slide I wanted to point out. This is one of the hardest things when you first get the diagnosis. What I'm talking about right here is one of the hardest things as a parent to accept. A newly diagnosed child. Your child may be different, but they are not less worthwhile than the typically developing peers. There's going to be some challenging times. There's going to be some times you're going to want to pull your hair out. There's going to be some times that you're going to want to yell and scream. And I tell people all the time, go out, yell, and scream. Just don't do it in front of them. But the best way I found to think about this, that if you love them, then anything is possible. They're going to take their cues from you. They're going to read you. And so, even though it's difficult, it can be helped. Number 6, 10 things I wished I had known. Now, I put all the rest of these on one slide because if I'd have just done it separate and added more information, we'd just have boom, 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 boom. So I didn't do that. This is one of the strangest things. Kay and I went to the lawyer when we were in our 30s, and we made a will. We had somebody that we loved and trusted, a family in Memphis that have been mentors to us our whole life. And they had 5 children of their own. And so we said, hey, if anything ever happens to Kay or to me, or both of us together at the same time, would you be willing to take our girls then? They didn't even hesitate. Sure, we will. So we go to the lawyer. We make a will. We make a will. And when we make that will, it was the strangest thing ever. We got in the car. I said, that just felt weird, didn't it? Here we are in our 30s, and we've got a will. But let me suggest this to you. If you don't have a will, and you do not specify in that will, the worst thing is for your child to become a ward of the state. And so you want to do that. So what do you need to do? You need to list your assets. You need to choose your beneficiaries. That's true regardless. You need to appoint an executor. You need to sign everything. You need to have duplicate and triplicate. It needs to be in several different lock boxes. Don't keep it all in one place. So if something happens, you have the legal documentation that you need. Be sure you communicate with your other child. We've just gone through all of that with Paige. We've just gone to the lawyers because the family that had control of our kids when they were smaller, they're well up in years now. And so we had to go and, we had to go and get some things done legally so Paige can come into that role for us. Guardianship and conservatorship. I need to let Kay come up here and talk to you about that one, but she's not going to do it. She's looking at me like, Guardianship or conservatorship. Both of them have their place. The guardianship has a broader reach. The guardianship deals more with medical and where they're going to live and so forth. Conservatorship does more with finances, but it also can deal with the medical. Kay will tell you that one of the hardest days of her life, I was off in a gospel meeting, I think, somewhere, and I wasn't with her when she had to go to court. It's the strangest feeling in the world. You bring this child into the world. They're your child. But guess what? Kay had to go to court and get conservatorship of our child. The judge banged the gavel, granted that. Even though we brought her into the world, they said, here's why you need it. If she's 18 years of age, and she needs, maybe she has a life-threatening, something that needs surgery. If she says, I'm not going to have this surgery, there wouldn't be anything that Kay and I could have done to have made her do it because she was legal, even though she has autism. But with that, we're able to make financial, we're able to make medical, we're able to make decisions for her so that we can care for her. And we don't have to worry about if that surgery is needed or not, because we can take care of that. So check into those. If you hear nothing else, I know I'm just doing I know y'all are there, but if you don't hear anything else from this seminar, make that happen sooner than later. Wouldn't you agree? And that way it's in place. That's a weird feeling. It's a weird feeling. But it's imperative, because that way you can care for your child as she progresses and so forth. Conservatorship or guardianship, you can have the same person in either role, in both roles. Usually that's not the case. You'll usually have a trusted family member in one. You'll have a trusted family friend perhaps in the other. But it is extremely important. It's extremely important. I wished I had known about all this before. Here we were coming up on 18 years of age, and we're going, whoa, somebody said, have y'all done this? No, didn't know we had to. Well, here's why you need to. So I knew that this would be a shorter, to the point kind of thing. There's not a lot to really hone in on here and develop. So, I'm giving time back to the last time we were together. Let me take your questions. I know this was short, sweet, and to the point, but I knew this one would be.
David, when you introduced the elders to this particular talk, Alan Kenningham said, please address being aware of what your rights are.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so please.
I tell you what, when we come back, let me look at some things because I don't want to mislead anybody. I remember us now having that talk, but that's been 2 months ago. But Alan, I will address that, but I don't want to mislead anybody.
Mention about our son with ADD, and that's something that we didn't know, and what our rights were and what his rights were, and we made some mistakes and didn't take advantage of some things that we could have. So it's important. So I appreciate that.
Sure. Anyone else? Okay, go ahead. I did do that, didn't I?
When we got the conservatorship, when she was 18 or coming up on 18, at that time, Paige was a minor, so she was not included in that documentation at all. So I didn't think anything more about it until just within the last few months. I was going through some things, meeting with an attorney with my mother, and this attorney kind of broached that subject with me, and we talked about it, and she said, well, we need to add Paige onto there now that she's an adult, and that's who we want her care to be under. And so we went through the legal process, and it was a process just to get Paige's name added to that conservatorship. But it was very important in the event something happens to us. It was an automatic thing that she's going to be in charge of her, but we had to make it legal. So I'm just saying that so that you don't get caught off guard, or if you know someone that's going through this. And also, you do go through an attorney for that process, and they walk you through and take you through all the steps. And there are various levels of conservatorship, or there were at the time we did it. You could leave them with some rights, or you could take them all away. And in our situation, we just took them all away. There's one component where they could get a driver's license, or they can still have the right to vote. I mean, it's all kinds of different things included in that, and it's a tailored conservatorship based on that child and the situation that they're in. But it's highly important because when they hit 18, they're on their own. They can say yes or no, as David pointed out, and you can't do anything about that unless you've got that documentation. And I keep a copy with me all the time.
Anybody, anything else before we break for lunch? Thank y'all very much. Let's go ahead and have our blessing for the meal, and then we'll do that. And we'll come back in here at 12:30 and be ready to roll in. So that gives us a little over an hour. So let's pray together. Father God, thank you for the blessing of being together with each other and with people who love you and who praise you. Father, right now we thank you for the opportunity to share a meal. Thank you for the meal, and thank you for the time together and for the fellowship. We thank you so much that we share